Now we got first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and reverse. We're good to go. So I was recently checking out the front end of my JK and I found out that it needs U-joints. They can be tricky to do, but I do them all the time at work and it's really not that big of a deal. So I'm going to kind of bring you guys along. I'll show you the tools you need, especially the stuff that you have to have. This one's got a little bit of rust on it, so it might be a little difficult. If you don't have this stuff, don't even bother trying to do this job. This is pretty well some of the stuff you're going to need, but the thing that you absolutely have to have is a 36mm axle nut socket. You're going to need a 21 to get the brake caliper bracket off, which I just take the bracket and the caliper off as one. You're going to need a 12-point socket, 13mm. Half-inch drive is preferred, but this is a 3/8, but it'll get the job done. The factory bolts are these. If for some reason someone's replaced it, they're usually a 16mm. Obviously some ratchets. The rest of this stuff's like whatever. You are going to have some sort of a chisel or a punch to get the retaining rings off. Obviously U-joints, jack stands, some sort of a pry bar helps. I like a round file to take the burrs off the ears of the yoke. And then stuff that will make your life easier. An impact gun and an air hammer. That will come in crucial getting the wheel bearings off. It's not required, but it sure is handy. So there's two different U-joints that you can get. Now if you have one of the older JKs, it's going to be a 5760X. If you have one of the newer ones, it's 7166. I'm going to be honest, I don't know exactly which year the breakover is from switching from one to the other. I assume it's between 2010 and 2012. One of the first things I like to do is hit this with whatever penetrating wheel you got. And then the same thing, the minute you get the brake rotor off, you hit the threads of the 3 bearing bolts right away and just let them get soaking. I find it easier to pop the steering off just so you can move this back and forth and get at those bearing bolts really easy, but it's not necessary and I'm not going to do it this time. If I was at work, I would totally be doing it. This one had a steering wheel lock, so I had to go put the key in ignition to be able to turn it. So these 2 bolts on the back are 21s, and it will take the caliper and the bracket all off as one unit. There's no need to pull these little ones and separate the two. You just pull it off as one. Boom, bang. And then it's a good idea to have a bungee of some sort to secure that. You don't want to let it hang off the brake line. We're just going to use a zip tie or two. So I've had these brakes off recently, but I have never had these bearings off, and you can see my dust shields have completely rotted away. These are those bolts I was talking about, making sure you just get them soaking as soon as possible, and sometimes I even throw some in this crease too. Okay, so now around here on the back side, these are the 12-point bolts that I was talking about. These don't look as bad as I thought. Sometimes they get so rusty the splines just kind of corrode off of them. They're usually kind of tight. I'd suggest using a breaker bar or something at least to break them free. If you pop the steering off, you can actually turn the wheel like this and just hit them with an impact and then turn it the other way to get the other two. But because I don't feel like doing that a million times, we'll just use the brake bar. You definitely want to make sure that you get it all the way seated on there. Sometimes the U-joint will be in the way and you can just rotate this a little bit. But if you try to crank on it with it only like halfway on there like that, you're pretty much guaranteed to strip the splines out. Sometimes you just have to wiggle it or even hit it with a hammer to get it to fully seat. See if this little ratchet will have what it takes. Oh, maybe not with my left hand. I have snapped these off before. I've stripped the heads off of them. I've had lots of bad things happen. Put the old cheater pipe on there. There she went. Oh yeah. Another tip, if these feel like they're getting tighter as they come out, squirt a little bit of goo in there and reverse it. Run it back in a little bit and then flip. Usually makes it easier. And that's all there is to it. You just got to do it 5 more times and hope you don't break any. while we got the wheels turned this way, we may as well grab these ones we can get to. Before you get too carried away, it's a good time to do this. Now some of my nut has rusted away, so a 35 would actually fit on there better, but we're gonna go for it. So if you don't have an impact and you have to do this with a breaker bar, just take a pry bar and like put it between the lug studs and then let it touch the ground so that this doesn't try to spin while you're cranking on it, because otherwise it's just gonna turn. The impact, you can just kind of hold it by hand. Cha-ching. Before I take this apart any farther, I almost forgot I was going to show you how I go about checking to see if your U-joints are bad in the first place. Basically, I put a pry bar under the inner axle shaft ear while it's pointed down. You see all that up and down where this part isn't moving and that part is. It's a little easier to see before you take the axle nut off because now that part's moving too, but I'm pretty sure you can see that whole thing is just... it's no good, and if that fails going down the road, it's a bad day. So before you try to pull this bearing off here, it's a good idea to see if you can get the outer axle shaft to separate from the wheel bearing because it's splined in there. This one, I don't know how I'm getting this lucky with how rusty this Jeep was, but a lot of times there's a little divot in here and you can take a pointy punch and just wail on this sucker to get that to break free. I've seen these stick together so bad that we had to buy new ones because even like heating them with the torch until the bearings melted wasn't enough to get them apart. So your mileage may vary. There's actually a really cool trick for getting these off, and I have seen people mangle this flange on the bearing, this outer like triangle flange. There's like 3 tricks to getting these off easier than that, but I'm going to show you my favorite way, and that's basically you twist it. So you hit it on the side right here until it just moves a little bit, and then you hit it back and you just do it back and forth a couple times and it'll actually work its way out. Another way you can do it is leave one of the bearing bolts in there and actually steer the axle and let the bearing bolt kind of bind up against this and it'll push it out. I've never been a fan of that way, but I've just heard about it, but we're gonna see if my way works. This is where I normally would use the air hammer. It's after 10 o'clock on a Sunday night, so we're gonna see if we can get it with the brass punch and the hammer first. Yeah, that's not feeling very promising. My neighbors hate me anyway. We're just gonna use the air hammer. Dang, I don't really want to be any louder than that. We may have to let this soak overnight and come back to it, because I don't want to sit here and wail on this thing and get the cops called on me again. I was kind of hoping that those bearings would pop loose with a few taps, kind of how the stub shafts did, but no such luck. So we're gonna finish it up tomorrow after work. All right, back from work. It's time to get on this. It's kind of funny because I got to work today, and what else did I do? Nothing other than tearing the front end of a JK apart and doing the U-joints and axle seals, and basically the same job, but just a whole bunch more. And I got another one to do Wednesday. Anyway, make sure the air compressor's on and we'll see if the air hammer is strong enough to get these bearings moving. Alright, let's see if this sucker will move. Moved a little bit. So you can hit the back of this flange with a hammer, but I really don't recommend it because you don't want to destroy your bearings. That's why we twist it first to break it loose. So you can see, just going back and forth with it, it scooched it out a bit, enough to get what's left of my dust shield out of there. And I should be able to just tap this not that hard. There she goes.
Get your butt home! Because your mom said so!
And now we can pull this out. Sometimes it's helpful to get a pry bar in here behind this to help you push it out. Sometimes they just pull right out. This one's gonna just pull right out. I just went straight in the wheel out and it comes right out. I'm gonna try to get you guys a better shot of this moving. Moved a little bit. I'm going to attempt to show you guys how I do this with nothing more than just a hammer, basically, to change the U-joints, and of course a chisel to get the snap rings off. But in case these are really stubborn, I did bring this home from work, but I'm going to try to not have to use it. Now, if you do need one of these, you can usually rent these from AutoZone, O'Reilly's, etc. But if you ever need to do this on a trail, it's good to know how to do it with just a hammer. First thing you got to do is get these little stupid clips off of here, which there's one on each cap. The way I do it is get a chisel like this, put this in a vise kind of on an angle like that, and I just try to hit the edge of it and just hit it, and usually it'll pop them free. Sometimes they break, that's fine, you just got to keep hitting more pieces of it. And then usually if you get them to move out to here, you can stick this in right there and pry them the rest of the way off. I prefer to use a nice sharp chisel. A bigger one sometimes is better, but sometimes it just keeps slipping, so it just depends. It's nice to have a different variety of them. I've got these two and this bigger one here that we're going to be trying to use. Actually, I'm going to start with that. These things can take a while to get done and get off of there, and you better get good at it because you got 8 of them you have to do. Okay, that was luck, and that's what they look like. A lot of times they'll break in half, so you'll get half of it off and you got to flip it over, get the other half out. Let's see if we can get that lucky again. It's just a half of one, so I got to get the other half out. And yes, my little plastic ring is broken. Ooh, my finger just locked up. Oh no, look at that. It, like, the knuckle locked. I can't. Oh, fuck. That was weird. If you've never done this before, this will definitely test your patience. See, this big chisel, the corner doesn't want to get down in there because it's too close, so that's why it's nice to have some smaller ones. Catch this back side of it. Oh, broke again. So there's 2 on the inner, and then for the stub shaft ones, I usually just turn it around. Try to bring you in close. That broke into at least 2 different pieces. Once you get the hang of that, you get to do that 8 times total, so I'll bring you back after I get them all off. So, like I said, we're going to try the hammer method first, and I am going to use the vise, but just as like something to hold it against. So if you ever got to do this on the trail, you got to find a rock, a tailgate, something that you can hold the shaft against and bang on it, and you'll see what I mean in a second. It really doesn't matter what side you do first. I always find it easier to get the inner separated from it first, because then this one's easier to manage. So what you do is you open this enough to where the inner drops in, but these ears hold up here on the vise, and you give it a good beating right here. You don't want to hit it out here because you can bend these ears, but if you wail on it right here, this whole inner shaft will start moving down, and this cap will start exposing itself, and then you pull the cap, flip it, do the exact same thing, pull this off, and then you turn this around and do the same thing with just this little stub shaft. So let's see if we can get it to work, or if these are too rusty. Stubborn! Okay, let's see if the other side wants to play. So there's that. Oh, that one still has a little bit of grease in it. Oh yeah, that one's pretty well dry. Sometimes you have to get these out of here in order for there to be enough room. So we'll set this aside and we'll dress all these edges, make sure there's no burrs or anything that can damage the new U-joint. Now to get this one out, you do the same process. It's just you've got the cross up on there and you're hitting here, don't hit your thumb. Oh yeah, that one just shot dust out of it. Boy, I got to these just in time, I think. And that's that. Now, if for some reason you're doing this and you have to save the U-joint and reuse it, you just want to make sure you don't damage it or lose any of your needles, but I can't imagine why you would press it off and reuse it. I like to just take this round file and just make sure there's no like burrs on here that's gonna make it hard for the new one to go in. And then there's one more thing I'll file too that I'll show you. So for this, you want to get a nice flat file, and you want to do this whole flat edge on the inside, because that is where your snap ring is sitting right up against, and all these like lumps and chunks of rust and stuff make it harder to get the new one in because there's barely enough room to get them in. You don't want to crush your splines, so don't make that super tight. This file sucks. And then one more thing to check for, if you had any dents or divots from chiseling out those original rings, just make sure none of those have deformed it or made a sharp edge or anything. We're not looking for perfection here. We just want to get most of the chunks of scale and that kind of stuff off of there. So JKs have two different size axle U-joints you can use. It's basically a 1310 and a 1350, but with the internal clips instead of external, so the same ones from a drive shaft won't work. So it depends on your model and your year. Now, I originally thought that all the early ones, like from 07 to 11, used the smaller one, and everything after that used the bigger one, but I'm wrong. I think it's just the Dana 30s from 07 to 11 or 12 use the smaller one. It's a 5-760X. Everything after that uses 5-7166X. What that means is I got the wrong ones, because I do these all the time at work, and I swear all the old JKs had these, but I was wrong. So I gotta get different joints before we start. Alright, so it's time to put these new ones in. I prefer to install these without the tool even when I have it available, just because I've actually like over squeezed the ears before, and I've blown the ends of the caps out before. Sometimes I'll use it to get that last little bit to get the clip in, but we shouldn't have to do that. Even at work, I just use a hammer and a vise and it works out. Just take caps off of one side first, and you really don't want to get rust and dirt and crap in the caps or in this grease. So make sure that stuff's all cleaned out. You want to make sure none of your needles fall out, and that you don't get one that like falls in behind this. But get the first one started, just give it some taps. So usually I actually sink it a little farther than it has to go, because it makes the clip really easy to get on. Be careful not to knock these ones off too. Some people just take them all off. I don't like to do that because I don't want dust and dirt and junk getting inside of them. So now on this other side, what I do here, instead of just trying to shove that in there and hope the needles don't fall out, I push this one just a little ways out, but not so far that it comes out of those needles. And that's usually enough to get it started on these needles. This is the moment where filing that edge is going to pay dividends, because sometimes it's really hard to get the second clip in. It feels like no matter how hard you hit this, there's not enough space to get the clip in, and sometimes there's just not. But hopefully there is here. You can also press these in with sockets, hammer them in with sockets. There's like a million ways to do it, but I find this to be the quickest and easiest. So let's see if I did it right, if there's enough room to get my clip in. So I can see right offhand I still have to push this one back that way up against this clip. Better to get a smaller, like a ball peen hammer, something that'll just hit the cap. So now I've got that up against there, and sometimes it'll feel like you got enough room to get the clip in, but you don't. So the way I do it is I just take the end of it and just put it over here, and if it drops in, which it is right now, then you have enough. If it does not drop in, because it'll always drop in up here, there's more room, but if it drops in here but not on the sides, you got to get it over farther. But mine has enough, so we'll go ahead, pop her on. She's done. Now what you'll notice is sometimes after you do this, the U-joint is really stiff to turn, and that's because it's just in a little bit of a bind, you just smack the U-joint or the yoke right there, and now it's freed up. I'll do that again at the end. I'll hit both of them just to make sure everything's super nice and free. Doing this one is basically the exact same process. It's a little trickier though. So again, don't lose your needles. Put this one on and over. So the difference now is when you hit the joint, it's fixed in here so it doesn't want to move. So you have to kind of hold pressure against the back of this as you tap it, and you can even hold this just slightly off of there and it'll start to go in. Every time you hit, it'll seat the cap back down and you just kind of push it back out a little bit. Easy peasy. Got enough room for that. Now kind of the same deal on this one. You can just shove this over a little bit just to expose a little more of that without dropping out of that side. Again, hold pressure on this so you don't knock it out. And I got enough room. Like I said, sometimes there's not enough room and I end up having to take this and I just push on it the slightest little bit and that gets me the room I need. But if you do that too hard, you will blow the end of your cap on the opposite side out and you'll be buying another U-joint. Nobody wants to do that. Snapped right in. So now we'll just give those all a good thump. Now we got first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and reverse. We're good to go. On the second one, I was having a hard time getting the second clip in on the U-joint, so I decided to go ahead and just use the tool to get that last little bit, mostly because it was late and I was tired and I just wanted to get this whole thing done and go in the house and go to bed. Okay, so I did that one in time lapse. It only literally took me like 5 minutes at most to get that one put in. Everybody's got their own way to do it. That's just the way I like to do it. I find it easiest. I don't have to mess around with trying to press them in with sockets and all that crap. You just hit it with the hammer. They can take it, trust me. As far as getting these back in, you just got to be careful not to tear your axle seals. I'm missing the little, there's supposed to be these little plastic things that ride right here, and when you put this back in the tube, it keeps them up off the tube. It like lifts them because the axle seals don't have those like cones to guide it in. So the driver one is easy to get in without it. This one's a little tricky. You just kind of have to, because you're way out here and you have to lift that end of it up to get it up and in the seal. Other than that, assembly is the reverse of disassembly, so I don't think I really need to go into too much detail on that. So hope this helps somebody out, and thanks for watching.